Hey everybody, Just Intuitive Angel Healer here with your Grounded. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to another episode of Dancing in the Toxic Shadows, Finding Empowerment and Hope Through the Toxicity. This is a podcast that features an empowered soul swim through the toxic waters of life and how they have found the courage and strength and blind faith used to obtain the life that they truly want to live and how they encourage others to take that same leap of faith, no matter if they can only see the first two steps or not. Today, we have a very special guest, Brittany Brown from Portland, Oregon. She's a podcast host, of True Crime Nitecap, and a mompreneur. Hi, Brittany. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you. You have an awesome story of how you have ventured through the toxic shadows. So, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, age, where you're from, and a little bit about your journey before we get into the questions.
Yeah. My name is Brittany and I am 34 years old. 34. I have to do that math sometimes. And I am originally from the Bay Area, but I currently live in Portland, Oregon, like you said. I live here with my two kiddos. I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old. And then my little furry soulmate, Jezebel, who's snoozing behind me on the bed. And then we have a small collection of cats that apparently that's just what I do now is rescue cats. So
Fun.
yeah, so we have a very lively, active household, but it's never a dull moment, you know.
Nice.
So
Now,
yeah.
now, what inspired you to become a podcast host and create your own podcast?
Um, it's something that I've been interested in doing for a while. I am very throughout like everything I've been going through with my mental health and sobriety and just daily like everything. I've always been super open and honest with it on social media with people just cuz I know that not everyone is as comfortable being so honest about it. Since I like to do that so that it helps people realize like they're not alone and, there are people out there that are probably going through the same thing or similar. So I've always been very open about it with friends and family and strangers. And I've had a lot of people, be like, you should have a YouTube channel or you should write a blog or you should do a podcast or things like that. And so um, I kind of started brainstorming like ideas for a podcast. And on the other hand, I've also always been very much into true crime. And I had a friend of a friend that was starting Nightcap and they were looking for a third co-host. And so our friend kind of connected us and it was just like this match made in heaven. And so we started and so I kind of got my foot in the door with podcasting with the true crime one. And then eventually I'll be able to, branch out and do another one, more on like this sort of topic. So it kind of just all fell into place when I needed it to. And it's just been so much fun. Like it's just been a lot of fun.
That's fun. And how long have you been doing it for so far?
We've only been doing it for a month and it feels like we've been doing this forever. Like there's three of us that hosted and the other two live in Spokane, which is about 5 hours from me. And we've never met in person yet. Like I'm going there in a month so we can all meet, but our connection was so authentic from the beginning. Like it just fits so perfectly. So, yeah, doing it for a month, but it feels like way more.
Yeah,
Feels like we've been
I,
doing it for a while, but
I can totally understand that. I started mine last August, right around when COVID hit. But it was funny because I was already working on my first podcast. I didn't even know it was a podcast though. And it was I was just trying to do a women's empowerment showcase. And I found out that what I was doing was a video podcast. And I was like, hey, I got something here.
oh,
So I
yeah.
can do a podcast. And then I made 20 million podcast. And I just
Yeah, exactly.
a bunch of series. I have one podcast and then page and then bunches of different series because I don't understand how anybody really just does one topic. I think I'm too eclectic. I'm a Pisces, and I tried to just do angels and toxic relationships, and then I went and got a writer one and an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened. So um,
Yeah.
it's fun though, and it keeps me busy, and I get to meet awesome people like yourself through this. I've met so many because I wanted to create these because, like yourself, I feel there's a need to start talking about the problem and stop giving people pills. As a person, even in the medical field, I've worked with people in mental health. I worked with as a mental health tech with kids, and that's very disturbing. If you want an enlightening
Mm-hmm.
experience, go do that for a day, and you might appreciate your kids just a little bit more. Uh, but I notice it's such a taboo, and I've struggled with anxiety and mental health stuff my whole life. And it's not that I didn't, I, my problem was is I told people, hey, I have a problem, something's not right. And they said, no, you don't. You need to get over it. You need to get stuff done. And I'm like, wait a minute. So now that I'm 40, I'm able to do this, but I want to hear how your journey is, because that's the biggest thing. I want people to know that no matter how unfun a subject is to talk about, or triggering, you can talk about it in a way. And that's what I do here, is I want to give people a platform, because that is the biggest thing that we are fighting right now, is mental health, especially since COVID hit. People don't
Mm-hmm.
understand uh agoraphobia is a real thing. And but anyways, I would like to hand it over to you, and I would love to hear about your journey of how you erase the stigmas of the toxic shadows.
Yeah. I agree. It's like I said, now that I'm doing this true crime podcast, I'm like, oh, but I want to do one about this. And like, oh, I should have my kids do one about this. And yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, how many podcasts am I going to have in a year? It's so
Series. We
easy.
call them series.
Here we go. Okay. How many series will I have in a year? So, um, but yeah, I mean, my journey through all of this is so similar to others, yet also so different. I mean, that's how, I think uh, all, mental health or addiction, it's like everyone in, like for me, like going through recovery, it was like everyone in recovery, we all have that like bottom line that connects us. Like we're all addicts. But
Mhm.
so we can bond on that, but then we all have our own individual stories. And it's important, I think, to not look at someone else's story and compare it, or how they're doing, or how quickly they were able to heal, or and so for me, I mean, I've been struggling with mental health since early high school, and then also, as well as, that's when I started drinking, and that's when that started. So I currently struggle with anxiety and depression. And I am 5 years clean and sober. Um, yeah, it's crazy. Like I just had 5 years on January 25th, and it's like wild. And I realized that I thought that I was in the past, before getting sober, I think that I thought that acknowledging my mental health and my problems were just being like, you can't blame me. Like I have anxiety, or I have depression, or this or that, and so it's really only been through sobriety and what I've learned going through that that's really helped me to um, kind of grow and change my mindset. So I guess just like a little like quick, we call them drunkalogs, but it's so everyone has the same drunkalog. I started drinking at some point. At some point, it started getting worse. At some point, I stopped drinking. I mean, that's like the basis of everyone's. But for me, I grew up in a household that it was relatively chaotic, and I grew up with a parent who was struggling with addiction and alcoholism, and seeing that chaos, it was very easy for me to say, oh, like, I'm never going to do that, or I'm never going to let myself get to that, or whatever. And that unfortunately only lasted till I was 16. And then I, took my first drink, and that started the slow, progression of the illness. Over the next 13 years, I, went through periods where I wouldn't drink for a couple of weeks. And then I went to times when I was drinking every night, to black out. And I just went through so many ups and downs of my drinking. And in my eyes, I wasn't an alcoholic because, to
You weren't
me,
drinking
being an
by yourself?
alcoholic, yeah, I wasn't drinking. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't getting up at 6 a.m. and starting to drink from a plastic handle of vodka until I passed out. So I'm not an alcoholic, like, and yeah, and I like to go out and drink. So, I'm just being social or with this or that. And I just denied myself that, admitting to that for so long. And so yeah, I mean, I drank, and I went up and down with drinking, and I got married when I was 18. We had our first daughter when I was 19. Then about 6 years later, had our second daughter, and then divorced a few years later. So I had all these major life, situations happen. And again, through them, I would just kind of be all over the place with my drinking. And sometimes I would stop, sometimes I would disappear for a few days, and it really just was that same chaos that I promised myself not to put on my life. And um, again, because I wasn't that cliche, denied myself and my family, the opportunity to have me go through recovery. So it, I was kind of like a pretty like not awesome person before getting sober. I mean, I lied, I cheated, I was jealous, I was bitter. I mean, anything you could be like, what's a quality of someone that I don't really want to be around? Like Brittany had it. And so finally one morning in 2016, after a particularly not awesome night, and just kind of woke up like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I have these two beautiful kids that are not getting to have their mother. Like, in my eyes, during this time, it was better for them to not have a mom than to have the mom that I was. And so I kept myself away from them. I mean, I never had them taken away from me, but I took myself away from them because I thought I just couldn't change. I thought this is just who I am, and they don't deserve this. So I, on my own, decided to try getting sober. And at first it was, I'm going to try to take it, to cut back and learn how to drink like a normal person, which that's not
Doesn't
a
happen.
thing that Brittany the alcoholic can do. And I didn't realize that, and it eventually evolved to me, walking into my first, 12-step meeting, and it stuck this time. And by starting that process, just taking that first step to like admit that this was an issue, and then know that, okay, I need to do something to fix this. I mean, it just taking that first step and making that first choice, like it just completely altered the way that my life would go from there. Like I said, January 25th, 2016 is my sobriety date. I haven't had a drink or a drug since then. And yeah, thank you.
I totally relate to everything you just said. I guess we're not going to say, because me and my guy talked about that one day. I said, I never had an addiction. And he said, yeah, all of them, when you go to an AA meeting, they say that, but I never really did because my dad was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother, I feel, got that gene passed down. And me, I don't know, I partook, but I didn't for some reason. And I never woke up and it said, hey, you must drink me, you must smoke me, you
Yeah.
must whatever to live your life. And I never went lit. And I don't know how, because my dad was a raging alcoholic, and my mom,
Yeah.
she didn't really have that alcoholism. She was an alcoholic. So I think sometimes you get your shadow. I've been studying on shadows, and
Mm-hmm.
because I had my spiritual awakening in 2017, and because I had to get rid of all these toxic people and just to kind of find the answers to my life, because that's
Yeah.
what a lot of the addiction comes out of. It comes out of, and it's funny because I've never been an addicted person, but I understand. I've had so many people in my life that are addicted. I have two friends that are passed away now because they got their life, heroin took over their life, and
Oh.
one died on the operating table, getting her at 40, no, at 30 some, 35 something, getting her heart valve replaced. And my other one, her boyfriend at the time decided to choke her out and killed her. Because I don't know, she wasn't even high that night. That was the crazy thing. The toxicology came back that she had nothing in her system, and he had scratches on her. So I've had all this addiction around me, but I've never
Mm-hmm.
been the one addicted. And it's because I understand my purpose, because I am like the messenger. And I'm starting to learn. I've come to understand I'm an earth angel. But like, what's an earth angel? Everybody has this angelic, and I've always been more of like a warrior. So I always confuse me, like, how can I be an angel intuitive? How can I be this angelic? Because I am not angelic, and everybody knows, like, I'm the hot mess angel.
Right.
I'm loud and proud, and yeah. But I've learned they have the angel of mercy, and I've been studying the fallen angels as well. And I've almost come to understand that that is my purpose, is to be the angel of mercy, because I have sat in the shadows with so many people, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I tell people. I don't judge anyone, because I have been to my friend, I know that he's going to pass away because he has the biggest drug addiction in the world, because his life is just, he went to prison. His kid came out mentally handicapped, probably because of all the drugs, that,
Yeah.
and I just see his life, like, he could have been something, and now he really, there's not too much, like, he can, unless he really makes a turnaround. And one Christmas I went and sat with him at his house, and I'll never forget it. And it makes me, because this is the person I am. I was just really guided to go there and see him, because I don't go to Albuquerque very often. And I went
Mm-hmm.
there and I sat with him, and we sat in a house at Christmas time with no lights, no running water, no heat. He was in his room with like a lantern on, and I went and sat with him. And the reason why I'm saying this is because people don't always need you to fix them. People need you to love them.
Yep.
And that's the whole thing. And people hold a lot of judgment for people. I used to too when I was a little bit younger, probably about 10 years ago. I didn't understand how you could just throw your life away on drugs. And my
Yeah.
dad passed away when I was 16. He was uh, a raging alcoholic amongst, and I understand that it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also understand that this is my understanding, is that the fallen angels, I don't know if you know the whole thing about the fallen angels, but they kind of descended on a village. They were angels, and they were obsessed with the women of the village, and they descended on the village and had kids with the villagers, kind of like in the Greek mythology, Zeus,
Mm-hmm.
and you have Hercules. Well, that's a
Yeah.
big no-no in the spiritual world, in the human world. So what happened is all the generations are paying for that. This is my understanding, is that they're still
Oh,
paying for those fallen angels that descended down, because kind of like how they got cast down to the pits of hell or whatever you want to. I'm not
right.
religious, but this is how I'm understanding. This is how I've understood addiction, is
Mm-hmm.
that from that happening, that instance, all the people that got created, the generations that came from that, the shadow is still laid upon that. And that's where addiction comes from. And so I feel like when you're in a point in your addiction, it's not you anymore. Your
Mm-hmm.
soul has checked out, and it's like a gargoyle just comes and sits on your head, and you're on autopilot.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, go left, go right, and they're having fun playing you like a puppeteer, and that's
Yep.
almost how you feel. And I just wanted to add that, because I think it's people don't understand. It's not just, people don't want to go and spend their whole life and ruin their whole life, and nobody wants to go to jail or prison for all these things. But a
Yep.
lot of things happen in your childhood, or and your soul just can't do it. What would be your thoughts about that?
I mean, I definitely agree, and I think that that's an amazing like visual to put with it is, I mean, no one would choose to go through the life that an alcoholic or an addict goes through. I mean, I but I know that it is hard for people who don't struggle with addiction to not understand that. To them, if they take a drink and then they don't want to have another drink, they just don't have
Don't have
another
another drink.
drink. Yeah. And so it's so easy to look and just be like, okay, like, why don't you just stop then? When it's just, I, so I got just like, I got sober through AA. I don't currently go to AA meetings anymore just for personal reasons.
It's okay.
But I got sober with AA, and I still learn, I still live by a lot of the principles and the things that I learned there. I mean, and so for me, when I got into AA, like I said, I didn't feel like I was an alcoholic because I wasn't doing like your cliche, what you see an alcoholic do in a movie. But then once I started getting sober, I learned that being an alcoholic means you have an addiction of the body and obsession of the mind. So it means that, yeah, I could go a week without drinking, but if I take one drink, my body is now wanting it and my mind is obsessed with having it. And so I I could be sitting there. I mean, because I was, like I said, I was a bar drinker, and I could be sitting at the bar at 9 p.m. on a Sunday after being there since mimosas at 10 a.m. and just be sitting there like, what the fuck? And I could be sitting there like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, your kids are at home, probably wondering where you are. I mean, they're with their dad, but wondering where mom is. You're ruining your life. No one likes you anymore. Like, why don't you just not drink this drink as I'm putting a drink to my lips? I mean, it's so awful. And then I feel like I know for me, sorry, I try to make sure I don't say like, this is what everyone does. But I know for me, like I said, it got to the point where it was like, well, I'm a piece of shit anyways now. Like, I'd rather just stay here doing this than have the people in my life be around me. Like, they don't need, I'm not bringing any good to anyone. And so there's just, I think, a lot of um, misconceptions from the family and loved ones of the addict or the alcoholic that they like. I just was on another podcast recently that is really like geared towards the families of alcoholics and addicts, and kind of trying to just explain to, just give them tips on what they can do. And one of the biggest things is people, yeah, I mean, it's harmful to do the like, well, why don't you just not? Because every time someone says that, then like for me, I would have to then again face the reality that I really like I don't know. I something's not okay in my brain. Like there's something wrong. I don't know why I can't just not take another drink or not do another line. Like I wish I knew. If I knew, I would not, you know.
Exactly.
And
And that's ridiculous for somebody to tell you that, because that's like me. I've had people pleasing issues my whole life, and I've
oh
not
yeah.
been able to speak up for myself. So why did I let somebody talk to me that way?
Yep.
It's something in your psyche that you have to heal, and
Yeah.
it's nothing's wrong with you. It's just that most people that I've found that have addiction and stuff, it's simply for the fact that their contracts that they signed up for in life are a little too much, and sometimes we're upstairs before we get incarnated on this earth, and we're over there trying to be the cool guy and be like, yeah, I could do 5 karmic lessons. And
Yeah.
then I'm starting to learn, like, people who commit suicide and stuff, it is because it's not them anymore. Their soul, and this is my reasoning, but
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life trying to figure out like the whys of why is this way and this way. And now I'm starting to understand, in since this spiritual awakening, my connection with the angels, that I'm starting to understand that when people are in such a depressed state, it's not them anymore. And if they get out of
No.
it, a lot of times, and Ghost Whisperer, if you ever watched that show back in the day, had this
Uh-huh.
where it's called a soul walkout. And so there's angels and spirit that need to do stuff down here, and they need a body to do it. And so this is another fun thing. If you've ever had somebody who you've met, and like, say they were an addict and had alcoholic, whatever, and then all of a sudden they just, I'm a new person, I'm reborn again. And then you're like, you just don't seem the same. And they're like, yeah, well, what happens is that spirit comes down, and before that person does something to hurt themselves. So if somebody was going to commit suicide and then they didn't
Mhm.
say, what happens is the angel goes and talks to him and is like, hey, we could use your souls, so we'll make a swap out, and
Oh.
lets that soul walk out and another soul
Yeah.
take over. So if you've ever talked to that person, you're like, you're still John, but you don't seem like John. And that's what my understanding is that's what's happened. And I understand when you have addiction, I let people, like, I'm like, you're not you anymore, and it's okay. I can love you, but I've had to, unfortunately, lose a lot of people because I can't save you. I
Mhm.
tried to go pick up my friend and save her, but I stopped myself because I was like, I'm gonna go pick her up uh from Illinois, and I'm in Kansas, okay, and like couple 100 miles away. And if I bring her here, what if all of a sudden she decides to go run around and and
Yeah.
now I can't find her, and now it's even worse. So I had to take that
Yep.
bitter pill of walk away. I really would like you, because I know I even talked to my other friend who passed away, and I talked to her family, and she was telling me they were making her sleep in the garage, because that's what people do to addicts. They're like, I don't trust you, you're going to hurt me. And I even talked to her aunt, and they were like, it was just such an awful conversation. I was like, I don't care what she's done or what she's doing.
Mhm.
Love her. And like,
Yeah.
people are so caught up on what you're doing and stuff that they don't know, hey, I just need some love. That's
Yep.
really what I need. What would be your personal insight on that, while we're on the topic? Because most people, they talk about this, but they don't talk about, hey, how does that
Yeah.
person feel?
So I feel like in a situation like that, like one thing that if anyone reaches out to me, like who has a loved one who is in their addiction and they're like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I've tried to have them do this, I've tried to have them do that. Um, as hard as it is to hear, like it gets to a point where you have to like that friend, personally for me, it would have made more of a positive impact if that family member just didn't take me in than if they took me in and treated me like a criminal. Because it gets to a point, and this is what happened with me, with a lot of the people in my life, is, if you have someone in that, you have to be like, I love you very much, but I can't watch you doing this to yourself. And letting the addict know that they are loved, because for me, I mean, I still even have little bits of like, I don't want anyone to be mad at me. And so I would just avoid everyone because I didn't want to deal with them being mad at me, or I didn't, but just being like, I love you, but I can't put anything towards your lifestyle anymore. Like, it's just, I mean, it's enabling when, if you have this person that is, like a friend of mine reached out to me, and her cousin is literally on the streets, and her aunt keeps giving the cousin money and doing this, and she thinks that she's helping her, but that's actually hurting, because that you're never going to allow that person to get to rock bottom. For me, I I kind of always had somewhere to go sleep, and in my life, like my last person that I held on to was my kid's dad, who was my ex-husband. And no matter what, I knew that if it was 3 a.m. and I was, drunk and high and feeling suicidal, I could call him and he would talk me through it. And then I'd get to the next day and like, okay, well, I got through it, so I guess I can do it again. And at one point, he just finally said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be the person you call at 3 a.m. Like, I can't watch you doing this. And that meant more to me and my recovery than if he gave me a bedroom to sleep in. Definitely, like you said, like with your friend on Christmas, I don't always want someone to try to tell me how to fix a problem I'm having. Sometimes I just want to know that someone is there and loving me through it. I I feel like at this point in my life, I'm single, and I was in a relationship that I just got out of a little less than a year ago. And in that, I felt like if I was having, because I mean, I'm sober and I'm living a life that I love, but I still have a lot of shit going on, and I still have a lot of days that are not awesome at all, and days where my depression gets me feeling really, really low. And if I would try to about that, or kind of tell him like, oh, I'm really depressed today, he was always trying to find a solution for it. And it was just like, I don't want that. Like, can you just like lay with me? Like, just love me. Like, I don't need a solution to this. And I think that is one thing that people who have a loved one who is dealing with all this, they don't understand, And so I feel like if you have someone that is going through that, if they come to you and are, telling you that they're having a rough day or this or that. I saw someone, I can't remember the exact wording they said. Someone posted something on like Facebook and said like, do you basically just asking like, do you want a solution or you just want company? And if that person's trying to brainstorm solutions or how to, then that's awesome. Offer all that advice. But if that person just wants to know that I'm still loved even though I'm damaged, like that is something that not a lot of people offer, and you don't realize how valuable that is for someone whose brain is just so all over the place. I mean, we feel completely unlovable a lot of the times, and we're treated like we're unlovable. And when you have someone come along and show you that, you are lovable, your faults and all, like that is such a special thing to come across. And it it is so valuable in, you know, when you finally, making that decision to get sober. I mean, no one, sorry, again, not no one, but for me, it's like if I didn't think that anyone around me still loved me, what's the fucking point of being here? I mean, why would I get sober? Like, and so knowing that I still had the love from people, even if it had to be from a distance for their own sake, like that was enough to help me want to, do better and be better and, improve things. And so just making sure that you're always letting them know that they're loved, and love doesn't mean enabling them. Love doesn't mean giving them a garage to sleep in so they're not on the street. Like sometimes you have to be on the street. Sometimes you have to not have any, like you have to hit that rock bottom to figure out that you need to fix something. But knowing that these people still love you, is such a huge part of wanting to get better. Like, so I don't
It's
know.
it's a very fine line that you have to walk, and I've walked it with so many different people. Like I said, my dad was the first one who introduced me to what an alcoholic could be, because at the end of his life, he was drinking a pint of vodka to wake up in the morning to stop having the shakes. It was
Yep.
that bad. Like this man drank like a fish, and what happens is I'm an energy healer. I do Reiki as well as spiritual coaching. And
Hmm.
I've learned that people that have addiction a lot of times have a closed off heart chakra. It is because
Mm-hmm.
you've had so much trauma in there, and we're taught not to show our emotions. It's never a good time for mental health. It's always like everybody's just too busy for us to
Yep.
have a moment. Because every time I've had a moment, I've never barely, just recently I've had, I'm starting to, feel like I understand what I'm going through and stuff. But I've reached out to people my whole life, and nobody ever reached out back to me. I've really got, even doctors told me it's all in your head, and I'm like, you're a doctor, you are a terrible doctor telling me this is all in my head,
Yeah.
because thank you. I already know I'm a little off, but you just helped that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's in my head, but
But
like on a medical term, like it's
exactly. And, because
yeah.
I told my doctor I had claustrophobia, and she really told me that that's not possible. So, and that's why I like to have conversations like this, because I understand there's some people that reach out. There's some people that, if they have an addiction, you're going to have to let them hit rock bottom, but you can still kind of intervene behind them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you have to, like, I now that I know the power of the angels, you're getting love and light sent to you in the back end until you can,
Right.
get happy, and then all of a sudden you're like, I feel lighter. I'm like, yeah, that's why, because I'm over here projecting some love
That
and
was
light.
me.
But that's because I've learned,
Yeah, no, exactly.
and you can't rationalize with someone who doesn't know that they have a problem. If you have an addiction, most of
Mm-hmm.
the time you don't think you have a problem, or you don't know you have a problem, and then when it's brought to your awareness, just like healing, it's really hard to, now you got to have a support system. I met a guy one day at the angels are always sending me people, and I ran into this guy one day at a outdoor concert here in Colorado. And I about fell off the stairs when I was talking to him, because this conversation was very powerful. This guy looked like one of those drunks, right? But
Mm-hmm.
talking to him, and I'm making fun of this band, because
Right.
this is just terrible, the worst hip hop. I don't know. This was just a terrible band. So I was making fun of it, because my dad, went to real, like, Rolling Stones and Counting Crows,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
Black Crows and stuff. So I'm sitting there making fun. I was like, this is the lamest concert I've ever had, because it's a family, Parker,
Yeah.
Colorado concert. And this guy, I'm start talking to him, and he's making jokes, and he starts talking to me, and then, well, I'm an empath too, but all of a sudden he starts telling me about his journey of being an alcoholic. And he
Uh-huh.
tells me that he had he had he lost everything, and then he couldn't keep it, and he went through his journey, and then divine timing came back in, and he ran into someone who was his boss, and anyways, it ended up that they ended up helping him get back on the track. But he was sitting there telling me, it was the craziest thing. I didn't know this guy, and it
Yeah.
was like I was talking to my dad. It was like my dad's spirit was
Oh.
there talking to me, and he was just telling me the insides of that he didn't enjoy being an alcoholic. Now, this is just a weird conversation to just all of a sudden sit there and
Yeah.
have with someone. That's why I feel like my dad was in spirit, like,
Oh.
because it was so powerful. And he was like, I wanted to do good. I didn't want to lose everything, but I didn't feel good enough about myself, and I
Yep.
lost everything. And now he got his life back together. That helping hand, it's not hand out, it's a hand up. And this
Yep.
person hired him. He got housing again and made it where he got a motorcycle, and now he just drives around and goes and hangs out at different things and sees
Oh.
people. But it was just like the people don't understand that they don't want to be fixed. And sometimes everyone has good intentions. When I first started being a spiritual grounding coach, I've always been a talker. I've always been a coach my whole life. I just didn't know there was a job for it. But so when I first started out, I used to tell people, they would tell me their problem, and because I can get angelic guidance, and I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not going to tell you, your
Right.
future, but I am going to give you the guidance that you need, just like that. And I know when I first started out, I wanted to give it to everyone. And I was like, woo,
Huh?
angelic guidance for everyone. I can fix everyone. And then
Right.
a lot of people, a lot of people were very, very thankful for it. But then when I gave certain people, I've learned, this is what you learn as a spiritual healer. Not everybody's ready for the message. And even
Right.
though you can give people the truth all day long, but if they're not ready for it, I had a lot of people
Yeah.
look at my message and they wouldn't even respond. I was like, I either hit a nerve or they're really mad or I hit a nerve and they're mad at me.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I've learned to wrangle that in, because you get all this excitement. And now, I never tell anyone something that they don't need to know. You know what I mean? I always ask,
Right.
can I give you, always ask people permission. And I think that's the medical part of me. I always will ask, hey, do you mind if I share some guidance? But I never just shoot my guidance out there, because again, whether or not you think you want to know, unless you give me permission, I don't need to
Right.
tell you, because there's a lot of psychic mediums that love to go in groups and just share everything, and then that person's scared to death, sleeping with a rosary, thinking that
Right.
and I understand it, because you can't just give people information that they're not ready for. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes you're not ready to hear the truth. And I always say, you're not making mistakes. You are learning life lessons. And if you went through a lot of crap and you're still here, guess what? You have a life purpose. Just like I have a life purpose, you have a life purpose. And if you went through an extreme amount of shit in your life, you are most likely a light worker, most
Hmm.
likely an angel of mercy, and here to help others pay it forward. So I'm very happy that you've overcame that darkness. And
Yeah.
even though it's something you'll have to manage, just like I have to manage my PTSD and my anxiety every
Yep.
day, it is not something. I always say I am not my trauma,
Yep.
and my mental beings don't rule me, because I'm a pretty awesome person. And if
Yeah.
you're going to judge me by the fact that I might have a panic attack if I get too hot, or if I get worried, or whatever I have today, but you know what? Those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind.
Yep.
Dr. Seuss. And I love to I just want to give you a high five for fighting through the toxic shadows, because I've lost a lot of people along the way that have had the same struggles. And if we can just get together and understand that we can help each other. And if we
Yeah,
stop putting so much damn judgment and criticism on each other, guess what? Just go out there and help someone. Ask them what they need. Don't tell someone what they need. And when they tell
exactly.
you their problem, don't tell them they're a horrible person or they're making it up.
Yep.
Analyze what they have to say. And if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So,
Exactly. I agree. I mean, I feel like for me, I spent a lot of my life and even in my early sobriety blaming who I was on my past or my childhood and this and that. And it's so important to understand that it's definitely it's healthy and it's okay to acknowledge those past traumas and acknowledge all of that, but that's not what your life has to be. I mean, you can't change the things that happen to you, but you can change how you move forward from them. And sometimes it takes other people longer than others, and that's okay. And um I mean, yeah, if I meet someone and they see who I am today and the kind of person and friend and mother and everything that I am, and pretty fucking cool these days. Like I'm a pretty good person these days. And if they were to see that and but then be like, "Oh, but remember that time 6 years ago that you did this?" It's like, "Okay, but if you can't acknowledge someone's growth, then that's not, that's a toxic energy that I don't want in
yeah,
my life." And so that is such an important thing is, just yeah, removing. I mean, I constantly say like you have to remove the toxic energies and and engage
exactly.
in them because that's energy that you have and you need to figure out where you're going to allow that energy to go. And if there's someone who is just taking that good energy from you and just you don't, it doesn't matter who they are, you don't need them in your life. Like you don't need
Exactly.
that. And
Even if they're your parents, I want to point that out to
yeah,
anybody out there. If you have family members that are doing the same thing, or the uncle that just points his nose down it or points his nose up
yep,
at you, leave them. Okay. Like
yep,
your family, you are not your family. And even though you share the same blood, you are not them. And it's okay if you don't I personally, I have a rule. If you are nice to me and you're just plain out a bad person to me, or you carry
mm-hmm.
judgment, depending on who you are, I might, tolerate you for whatever moments I have to tolerate you and just
Right,
my distance. But most likely, I'm just not going to have you in my life, and we
yep,
can catch up next life. And I don't feel bad for that at all because I've had to accept my responsibility for my participation in the toxic shadows, and other
yeah,
people need to too. So
exactly,
it is not all your fault, and it is
nope,
not all your fault, especially if you have an addiction or, something. There's other things that help create that. You weren't the only one. You didn't just wake up today and say, hey, I don't want to live life and I don't want to feel anything. Nobody wakes
right,
up
yeah,
and does that. So I
no.
congratulate you for being you're like the toxic avenger. I think it's awesome that you've overcame. What is your daily routine? Because I'm all about self-care here, and I know a lot of people
Oh,
listening want tips. And even if you don't have, because it's something you have to work into, but what is something that you help keep yourself balanced that you didn't used to do that you find yourself doing more now?
I mean, there are some people who they get sober and then, a couple years later they're like, "Oh, I have, this job and this house and this like routine and that's great." I'm not one of those. I am 5 years clean and sober, and while I have a really amazing life that's filled with a lot of amazing people, my daily life is still chaos. And maybe I just run on chaos and that's okay. I mean, like I have my two kids, I have all these animals. My both of my main jobs were like directly affected by COVID. So I've been kind of just doing gig work and side hustles for the last year. And, not a single day has a routine. But I find ways to, I guess just acceptance of just one of the biggest things that I have now that I didn't have before is my mindset. And there's a couple things that just help me on a daily basis. And that's one, remembering that everything is temporary. So that can be good things and bad things, but I usually use it towards, if I wake up one morning and I really am just depressed that day, it is giving myself that permission to know that it's okay to have a bad day. It doesn't mean that you're failing. Um, and understanding that it's temporary, that, yeah, today might kind of suck. And, but then I get to go to sleep and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and it's going to be a little bit better. And so just having that ability to be self-aware and know that I give myself permission to identify when I'm having a day that's not great, and I have a very open communication with both of my kids. And I'm able in the morning, if I know it's going to be a weird day and I'm going to be, kind of grumpy, I will tell them, like, hey guys, I'm not feeling like awesome today. I might be kind of grumpy. I might snap a little bit. I just am having an off day. And like, we all know, okay, we're going to prepare ourselves for that, and just, so I think just being self-aware and being open to normalize that you're going to have days like that. I mean, to my kids, it's just mental health is just something that we talk about on almost a daily, and it's normal. It's not, I'm not a bad person because I'm having a bad day. And so I just really think, like I said, just my self-awareness is something that I feel is a huge gift that I've given myself through work. I mean, for the last 5 years. And, and then, I mean, doing the podcast has been something that is just mine, and it's something that a couple hours each week, I get to go just into my room and do this thing that I'm passionate about, for myself. And I think just, yeah, just letting myself be so aware is something that I will never take for granted. I mean, music is incredibly important to me. I mean, I grew up in, my dad is a musician and my mom has always appreciated music. So music is very therapeutic to me, and I usually will have it on all the time. And there's a podcast that I found a couple years ago, and um, it is, it's my favorite. And it's just the dumbest comedy, but that podcast can pull me out of literally, like, if I feel like there's no way I could smile, I can turn that podcast on and it just makes me laugh. And that is like been like my therapy, for this past year. And also I started like crafting. Like I bought a Cricut machine around Black Friday, and I love thrift shopping. So sometimes I'll just tell the kids, like, like I said, they're 8 and 15 now, so they can stay home for a little bit. And I'll just, if I feel myself really like this is too much, I'll be like, I'm going to go thrift shopping. And I just go and I just walk and I try to get stuff. Like I have a whole hoard of stuff from the thrift store because I'll use it, I'll get mugs or frames, and then I'll use the Cricut to make stuff, with those. And so, yeah, I would say just, that listening to that podcast, listening to music, giving myself time to go and do something that's not necessary, but fun, like thrift shopping. And I get my nails done every month, and it is my like treat to myself. And I love, I could look super frumpy, but I got my nails done and they look nice and they make me feel good. And I let myself do that, and so it's just even finding the littlest thing that just lets you feel like you're doing this for yourself, treat yourself to something, it changes all the time. Cause like I said, I am very busy, and a lot of people tell me to slow down and take a break. But I mean, it makes, honestly, I think I do this because these are all things that I couldn't have done when I was drinking. I mean, I could not have juggled the things that I juggle these days. And I feel like that's a big part of it, is I take on a lot of tasks and a lot of jobs and commitments because I think maybe
Keep yourself
subconsciously a part
busy.
of me is just, yeah. And so I think subconsciously a part of me is just so happy that I can do these things because I couldn't do them before, And so I like being so busy that, like that I can't like take a breath, it's nice because I couldn't, like, before I would just spend my entire day drinking, like, so it's just something I do. And So yeah, I
I
mean,
think
find the
that's
littlest things like that bring you some sort of satisfaction and joy, and
I
checking
think
off a really long to-do list at the end of the day. It feels good.
I think that's amazing. And thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed having you here.
Yeah.
And
Thank you
I
for
know
having
that
me.
a lot of people have enjoyed listening to you because you're very relatable. And, you're in that age group that people don't understand. In your mid 30s is when you start having this complication. Now, after you pass your 20s, it's
Hmm.
not just fun day drinking and partying with your friends. Now it's a problem. And if people would understand, hey, not everybody just is a drunk. It started from somewhere, and it usually started in your 20s. And
Yeah.
then if you didn't make it through your 20s, if you didn't have something to really strive for, then that just turned into, now that's your occupation. And now you have to spend another 20
Yeah.
years of trying to find a new occupation. So I'm very proud of
Yeah,
you.
I
And
know.
I think it's awesome that
Thank
you
you.
started it now, because I know plenty of people that are almost 70 and they still aren't giving it up. So kudos to you for dropping the bottle,
Thank
because
you.
I know that there's so much more in life, and I know you're going to find your happiness. You're still here, so I know we have a lot more fun things to see from you. What guidance would you give
Yeah,
fellow
thank you.
beautiful souls out there that are doing a similar toxic dance, and either A, are in denial that they're not having, that they're not in a toxic dance, or B, they want to just finally break free of it? What would be your advice for them?
Um, I think just give yourself permission to admit. I mean, it's so cliche, but admitting that you have a problem or have something that you want to move past is you can't get better from something unless you acknowledge that it's there. If you're doing the work, like it's not going to happen overnight. Just give yourself time and be patient with yourself. You most likely did not get to the point that you're at now within a matter of a week, and so you're not going to get out of it within a matter of a week. And, just be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, but still be strong and be, if you're one of my favorite things to say is like, I feel like going through recovery and just healing from these things, it's like working out. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing. If you're doing a workout and you're doing the same workout and all of a sudden your muscles aren't sore, well, those muscles aren't working anymore. They're not growing. So getting better and getting healthy is going to be super uncomfortable, but then that means that you're doing something right. And so, just remembering that, and um, that even though it might not feel like it, like there's like a very important reason why you're here. And you may not realize it for a really long time, but it's there. And, and all that is can be so cliche and cheesy, but it's all true. So, I think just be patient with yourself, and, um, just remember that like the energy that you allow to be around you, that's your decision, and you have permission to push that toxic energy away from you if you need to. um
That
yeah.
is so very true. And I always tell people, make sure you reach out. And if
Yeah.
the first person you reach out to is not responsive, keep on reaching out,
Yep.
because you'll eventually find your people. But if you just sit there and wait for somebody else to reach out, they're probably not going to come,
Yeah.
and
No.
you're going to be waiting an awful long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I really appreciate you coming today. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here. Where can our viewers reach you if they would like to view or have you on one of their podcasts, or if they would like to listen to your podcast?
Yeah. So you can find all of our stuff. It's at nightcaptruecrime.com. And on Instagram, I am on there, and it's Brittany Won't Shut Up. It's Brittany Won't Shut Up. And, or if you're on the Nightcap True Crime Facebook page, you can find me somewhere in there. Brittany Brown, you can reach out to me on Facebook. So I am on social media too much. So I definitely will hear from you if you reach out to me.
Awesome. And I'll have all the links in here
Yeah.
as well. But thank you so
Awesome.
much for being here today,
Yeah.
Brittany.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
having
it.
me. It was so nice.
Awesome.
Thank
Well, there you have it, beautiful souls. Another powerful guest that has learned how to survive their swim in the toxic waters, and break up with their toxic dance partner fear. If you need help trying to find a new dance partner, please reach out to myself or Brittany to show you how a four-letter word can change your life and your mindset. And that four-letter word is love. With love, all things are possible. Love and light, beautiful souls. Take care. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.